Ronn Owens, KGO Radio. The former chief of BP was a closet gay. Kept it to himself because he had to. And then he was outed. I can't really turn around and say he is the only CEO in the Fortune 500 who is gay, but the first openly one. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
Now, when I say the only one versus the first, are there other CEOs that you are aware of that are gay and just haven't come out?
Well, there's certainly no out gay CEOs in the Fortune 500. I find that statistically difficult to believe that there is no one who is gay who is a CEO. There must be somebody. But they haven't chosen not to come out.
What would be the problem with a gay person being a CEO in general, before we get to yours?
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing.
I mean, there was a period of time where people would just simply not, they wouldn't even work with a gay, but now this is a country that supports gay marriage. Why would it be so hard?
I think it's mostly, of course, always, as everyone says, it's the fears in people's own heads. It's will this disclosure change the way in which my business relationships are founded? Will I be unable to do business in different parts of the world? Will I attract too much attention to myself rather than the company? The list goes on. Will my clients like me or not like me? These fears go round people's heads, and it stops them being themselves, which is causes them a great, great cost.
Now, I pointed out that you were outed. Explain that. Who outed you and why?
I was. A former boyfriend of mine sold the story of our relationship to a British tabloid, the Daily Mail, for money. And they decided to print the story. I tried to stop them with what was called a super injunction in the United Kingdom because it was a personal story and it served no public interest to be published. In pursuing the injunction, I made a fatal error of judgment. I told a lie about how I met him. I'm not proud of it, but I met him on a gay site. He was a rent boy, and I said no. I actually met him exercising in a park.
Why would that have been so thoroughly different? I mean, if was the site like a Grindr? Was it purely a gay site, or was it gay and?
It was purely. This was a little while ago, so
yeah.
These were pretty rare things then.
Mm-hmm.
That was then, this is now. And it was not something I wasn't at all proud of, so I lied. And that caused a bit of a problem, a big problem, with getting the injunction, which eventually failed, and so the story came out, and it was printed in the British press and all over the world. And on that basis, I resigned from being CEO of BP because I felt that it would no longer be possible for me to be CEO of BP in those circumstances at that time.
Did you really resign, or were you pushed?
No, I really resigned. I decided that, whether I was going to be pushed or not, I didn't want to find out. I just wanted to do what I thought was the right thing, just get out of the limelight as quickly as possible. I was in the very strong limelight for a little while afterwards, and let BP get on with its life and let me change my life entirely, which I did. And it was one of the best things that ever happened to me to allow myself to become my authentic self.
Yeah, well, I can imagine the freedom that you get is unbelievable. But let's talk about one thing. You don't just walk into BP and become the CEO. You had to go from level to level to level, higher and higher and higher, and at no point, nothing about your personal life came out?
No, you're right. I joined virtually as a child. I joined out of school, out of Cambridge University, and I was with them for my career. And I went to some pretty tough places. I was one of the first people ever to go to Alaska in 1969 when the Prudhoe Bay oil field was being developed, and I worked in the field there. But I was very reserved. I did what most people in the closet do, which was keep their private life to themselves, never talk about it, never talk about the weekends, never talk about anything I was doing, and always avoided situations where you had to talk about family. I'd talk about my parents, but I wouldn't talk about any relationship.
Actually, didn't you say you took your mother to major events while she was alive?
I did. Well, when she became when my father died, she lived with me, and I took her to events and things like that. But in those circumstances of the day, of course, I was brought up in an environment when I was really being brought up when being gay was illegal. And, of course, any rumor about being gay could be used to blackmail or to bully you.
There are so many questions. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to jump on you.
Even after then, I mean, my mother, who was an Auschwitz survivor, was always telling me two things. Never tell anyone a secret, because they'll use it against you. And never be a visible member of a minority, because when the going gets tough, the minorities get persecuted. That's our own experience.
As someone whose grandparents were killed in the Holocaust, I understand the way your mother thought. We have much to talk about. John Browne is here. He is the former chief of BP, but also you are the Lord Browne of Mattingly. That's got to look so cool on a business card.
Well, thank you for that.
Yes. We'll continue. By the way, the book, I want to make sure you know the book. It's called The Glass Closet, Why Coming Out is Good for Business. We'll continue after this. Ronn Owens, KGO Radio, the former head of BP, the CEO, is John Browne. And this gentleman had been closeted as a gay person until he was outed. One of the things I got to ask you, John, is you went to Cambridge, and apparently when you went to Cambridge, being gay was a crime. How did you deal with that?
It was a crime until 1967, and in reality, people thought it was a crime for much later than that. So everybody just kept themselves to themselves, and it was really dangerous to do anything at all. And so you just kept yourself to yourself. I didn't have any encounter with a man until much later, in fact, until I went to the United States pretty well.
At Cambridge, though, wasn't it also deemed a mental illness? Do you ever think you were mentally ill?
Well, it was. It was regarded as something which is curable. People were given extreme treatments. I mean, the one everybody knows about, certainly anyone in maths and computing, is Alan Turing, who was given a hormone treatment to cure him of this homosexuality that caused him so much stress that he committed suicide. So, I mean, that was then, of course, and thank goodness we've learned so much more since that time.
Well, CEOs have to be kind of, I don't say this disparagingly, almost bland because you don't want to offend anybody. What about, I mean, the meeting ends and then you get the good old guys talking and they start talking about the gay guys or something. How do you deal with something like that? I mean, knowing that you were gay and yet you had to be around people who basically were homophobic.
Well, that's why I kept it to myself. But I do think that things are changing. I mean, I do take the point that corporations are very conservative, and as a result, they tend to value blandness. But not everybody does, and things like that have to change. Boardrooms have been conservative. That's why women have had a tough time getting into C-suites and into boards. It's why people who are different find it difficult to get there, because people look at other people and say, well, we want people like us because we feel more comfortable with them. And that's wholly wrong. So
you don't court any kind of publicity or something like that to do anything to attract attention to yourself?
Well, I think you've got to get the right environment so that you feel comfortable being yourself. And that's the whole essence of including different people, making it safe for someone to be themselves, safe to come out, requires not the people who are gay to do something, but the people who are straight to do something about it. And that's one of the reasons I wrote my book, is to write a letter to all the straight people to say, you have a very big role in this, to make it possible for people in a business environment which is very conservative, where people are very concerned about upsetting clients and people like that. You've got to make it safe for people to come out and be themselves in the business.
The average age of a CEO is around 60, I would guess. And if that's the case, any gay chief executive officer would have gone through the same experiences as you, the crime, the mental illness, all of that.
Yeah, but indeed, there are younger CEOs, but CEOs have an accountability, I think, to become updated and in tune with modern times. And they have to give leadership, which says inclusion, letting people be themselves and including people of difference inside a company is one of the biggest agenda items they deal with. Every CEO in the world almost says that their human resources are the most single important asset, and I agree with that, and I've always believed it. They need to make sure, therefore, that they send signals to include all kinds of people in that asset, and LGBT people are a very important part of that.
John Browne is the former head, the CEO of BP. He was outed. I want to talk a little bit about how that happened, who you were with. You had alluded to it at the top of the program in terms of where you met him becoming a problem. But lots to talk, but do feel free to call if you'd like to join us. 808-0810 is our number. Mr. Brown's been nice enough to say he'll go stay with us through the hour because I got so many questions. I'm sure you may have too. 808-0810. Lines are open if you'd like to talk to the author of The Glass Closet, Why Coming Out is Good for Business.
Want to break free. I want to break free.
The former chief of BP, John Browne, also gay, didn't come out with it himself, was outed. I want to talk a little bit about that, but put it bluntly, had you not been outed, would we know that you were gay right now?
Hypothetical question, always impossible to ask. I expect in the end I would have broken down somewhere, but I'd never even thought about coming out. I'd got so used to living two lives. When I started living two lives as a young man, it was kind of exciting. It was almost being like James Bond. You had a legend and the reality, and I built this great edifice of two lives, and I think the investment was so great I could never pull them down. So my guess is a long answer to a short question. I probably would have stayed in the closet as long as I possibly could.
Now, tell me about the guy who outed you. How long were you with him, and why did he out you? Although I'm going to guess money has something to do with it.
Not long. I wasn't that long with him. It was 2-3 years, and I think it's simply I never quite understood his motivation, but he wanted to get money, and so did just that. He sold a story for cash and put in, lots and lots of details, many of which were not accurate, but they certainly made a great read.
I was going to say that. You're the CEO of BP. Why would they believe this guy?
Well, there's always a tendency to believe, both sides of the story in tabloid journalism. It depends how it's written. Obviously, in order to make it possible to write such a story in the UK of that time, 2007, the newspaper had to demonstrate that it was in the public interest for people to know about me. So they effectively created a story which said that it got in the way of my work and that I was using company assets to support this guy, which was not true and proven not to be true by subsequent inquiry.
Did you sue him?
No. Enough was enough. I tried to prevent the story coming out. I failed in that. Enough was enough, and time to move on and make a different life, which is what I did.
Yeah, given, though, who you are, was it like we see today with the kind of paparazzi? Were you just surrounded everywhere you went?
So I decided I decided when I resigned, and then walked out of the front door of BP. I decided to do that, and I walked into the throng of paparazzi, and everyone taking photographs. There was news coverage until I walked out, and then the paparazzi got on their motorbikes and chased my car and kept me under siege in my apartment for about 3 days or so. And then, as the saying goes, the dogs were barking, but the caravan moved on. And so they stopped doing that. But then, for months afterwards, wherever I went, there were little news stories about where I was, and just a good way of repeating the old story.
When we continue,
So,
I do want to...
Time passes, and yesterday's newspapers, as they say in the UK, cover the fish and chips of the day.
John Browne, he is our guest. When we come back, one of the things I want to ask is, how about the people you knew, the people you worked with? Did they change their attitudes? We'll get the answers as we continue with the author of The Glass Closet, Why Coming Out is Good for Business.
I'm beautiful in my way, just I make no mistakes. I'm on the right track, baby, I was born this way.
John Browne is the former CEO of BP. He has been outed. He has written a book. It is called The Glass Closet, Why Coming Out is Good for Business. He is the only publicly gay, or was the only publicly gay CEO of a major Fortune 500 company. I had asked you before about others, and I guess names are not going to be used. There's one certainly in the area that everybody knows is gay, and nobody cares, but he doesn't come out. Is that normal?
I think the important thing about CEOs is that they have to send the right sort of leadership signals. It seems to me being yourself is a way of saying to people it's okay to be yourself, sending a strong signal that inclusion matters and that you want people to be as authentic as they possibly can in business.
I guess what makes it difficult for me to comprehend is, thinking of somebody here, Silicon Valley, everybody knows that he is gay. Why would anybody care if the company's making great money?
Everybody thinks the performance of the company is very, very important, it's financial performance, but making sure that everyone, that there's a big story here that I think in business that when people are fully engaged, when employees are engaged, you get much better performance. And on the long term, up to 30%. And that's been proved again and again. There are exceptions to that. And so I don't want to comment on individuals, but it seems to me generally it's always the case that when you get people being themselves, they're much more engaged, they're much more they're spending their time on the business, not hiding themselves away.
And this is the Bay Area, so, it wouldn't really be that difficult. A couple of questions I got to ask you. You must have had friends as you worked your way up the ladder. You had friends and continued to have friends when you were the CEO. Did any of them change their attitudes towards you once you were outed?
Well, of course, that was one of my fears. I assumed that, people would treat me as a pariah, but actually that wasn't the case. Almost nobody left me as a friend. Some people left me as business associates because I no longer did business with them. But those I would count as friends remained as friends, and it was quite an eye-opener. If anything, when I was outed, many people expressed their friendship and support of me very publicly. They wrote letters to the newspapers, they made statements, and I found that extraordinary. One of my friends who uses a very big turn of phrase said it's a bit like reading your obituary while you're alive.
Oof. Another area that just fascinates me is, as the CEO of BP, you had to deal with world leaders. And you take a guy like a Vladimir Putin, whose views on gays are fairly open. How do you sit down with someone like that?
Well, I think that seniority in business tends to protect you somewhat. If people want to do business with you because of the corporation, and it is the corporation they're doing business with, they'll do business with you even if they know you're gay. I think they all expect you to respect and obey the laws of the country you're living in or you're visiting, which you must do. You can't break the laws of any country. But they will respect that they just won't rate it. And it is something that is never brought up, really. I had, and I still don't have problems in Russia or in the Middle East.
808-0810, if you would like to join us. When we come back, I want to talk about his mother. Believe it or not, he never told his mother that he was gay. We're talking about a former CEO who was outed. His name, John Browne, the company BP, and the book, The Glass Closet.
I am beautiful, no matter what they say. Words can bring me down.
The former Former BP CEO is John Browne. He's talking about getting out of the closet, but it wasn't his choice. He was outed. Tell me a little bit about more about the guy who outed you. I mean, this guy seemed like an absolute rat. There was no indication that you ever had when you were with him that he was like that?
No, there wasn't, and the earliest indication I got was I think I misread, because I couldn't believe it, one or two emails that said that he might do something if I didn't help him out with various things. So
he was blackmailing you?
Well, whether it was or not, I don't know, but I certainly didn't treat it as that. And so it all came as a bit of a surprise. It happened just after the turn of the year, while I was on vacation, and I really had no indication it was going to happen like that.
Your new boyfriend, who I believe you're still with, correct?
Absolutely.
All right. Now, how do you meet a guy like this, and the guy finds out you're the guy who was running BP? I mean, and you're a lord. It's kind of an odd coupling, is it not? I think it would be a little daunting if somebody met you.
Well, I hope not. I mean, I'm still, I'm a person with a heart, and hopefully someone of a normal person of my age. No, my partner met me by sending me a letter, and very unusually sent me a letter to my home address, which almost nobody knew. And so I thought about it for a week or so, and I said, well, this is so unusual, I'll meet the guy. And one thing led to another, and we've been over 7 years together now.
It's ironic. How would he get your address? Wouldn't that make you a little suspicious?
Well, that's why I wanted to find out. I found it was an amazing piece of investigative activity, but he found it by looking very carefully at a photograph in a newspaper where they'd blotted out, I think, the address, but the building looked pretty clear.
So at least the guy was smart.
He certainly is. He certainly is, and a very wonderful person too.
Then talk a bit about your mom. You never told your mother that you were gay.
I tried to, but I concluded she didn't want to hear it. Her attitude was very much about protecting me, and her attitude was set, of course, in her own experiences during the war, being a survivor from Auschwitz, looking at people whose lives went just because of who they were, not because of how they behaved, but who they were. And their intrinsic being was regarded as unacceptable, and that's terrifying. And so that's the reverse of inclusion. So my mother said, keep it a secret, effectively. She said, don't tell anyone a secret, because they'll use it against you. And if you're a minority, keep your head down, because when things get bad, minorities are always persecuted.
Well, you would also, as I mentioned before, take her to BP events, and to be blunt, that sometimes is a signal, is it not?
It is, but I thought, I didn't think about it like that. I was looking after her. We're a very small family. My maternal family was wiped out during the war. My paternal family was very small anyway. My father was a late child. So I looked after her, and she came along. She was the life and soul of the party, and so I never really thought about it. Of course, other people did, and I expect there was plenty of commentary about, is he gay, is he not gay? And I never, people respect you to an extent when you're in a position of authority, and no one ever came up to me and said, look, are you gay, or you must be gay because you bring your mother to events. There was no conversations like that at all.
Interestingly enough, by the way, I believe it was day before yesterday, a Florida banker has made history. He's become the first openly gay chief executive of a publicly listed bank in the United States.
Yes, very good too. I think, in my book, I make very simple points about leadership has to really set the signal and say it's important to be, inclusion is really important for LGBT people, and measure it and behave in line with their thinking. And secondly, having role models is the single most important thing, because then people can identify not directly with a person, but with elements of a person to say, it's okay, I can be myself, I can see how that works. So having a CEO of a financial institution come out is, I believe, really important. It says that you can be yourself and you can be successful at the same time, and that's really important.
John Browne, former chief of BP. The book is The Glass Closet, Why Coming Out is Good for Business. We'll emphasize the business thing again and also ask about gay marriage, so stay with us. Ronn Owens, KGO.
I am what I am. I don't want praise. I don't want
John
pity.
Browne, the former CEO of BP, he has been outed. He's written a book, and that book has certainly gotten people talking. It's called The Glass Closet, Why Coming Out is Good for Business. How is it good for business?
Because it allows employees to be themselves, and so they can focus on the business rather than hiding themselves. I think they get much more engaged with the business as a whole. So that improves productivity, and you can see it from data studies again and again. The productivity goes up by up to 30%. Secondly, I think it really does send a big signal. If you can get LGBT people included properly in a business, it's one of the more difficult things to do because people are hidden. You don't know for sure people are gay or straight. But if you can get a really great environment for that, chances are you can get a great environment for all forms of inclusion and diversity. And so people will say, yes, this is a great company, I want to join it.
Given those good reasons to just come out and declare, yes, I'm gay, given that situation, since your book has been out, has there been any CEO who either has come out to say gay or at least talked to you and said, should I do that, or talk to me about it?
Well, I've certainly had people in the C-suite do that, and that's been very encouraging indeed. And I've had
the C-suite is what? Is that your office, the CEO? The
office of the CEO,
oh,
people
okay.
around the CEO, the direct reports.
Yeah.
So that's been very encouraging. I'm very pleased that I've been able to help some people, and also some young people. I'm very struck by the number of young people I interviewed who are still in the closet, and you'd think that in a young generation they wouldn't be, but they're so worried about being, if they're exposed as gay, whether it would get into the way in which they progressed in a company, or whether their colleagues who work with them would treat them differently. Some of them are in businesses where it's very male-dominated, and it's very, if I put it, it's more like a fraternity than a normal way of life.
We now have a gay NFL player, though, so, I mean, you want a male environment there, you've got one.
Absolutely.
Now, are you shocked, pleasantly shocked, at the rate at which people have flipped their opinions when it comes to gay marriage?
I'm pleased about the way that's happening. I think there's plenty more to do. I was very pleased to be part of the process of getting the change made in the UK, and I'm pleased to see that the States is moving. I mean, the United States is 50 different countries, but it's moving. And I'm pleased to see that many parts of Europe are moving too. It's very important that people have a proper definition of equality, which is not different, but being absolutely equal, and being able to get married as a gay person is a real demonstration of total equality.
You've been with your partner, you said, about 7 years. You going to marry him?
Yes. Yes.
When?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
I said, are you going to marry him?
Oh, well, we're still talking about that.
One final thing. I had mentioned just in passing that you are Lord Browne of Mattingly. Are you in, like, the House of Lords?
Yes, I am.
What do you do?
I sit on the crossbench, so I'm an independent. I'm not a member of a political party. And I get involved in certain causes and certain parts of legislation that I deeply believe in, and try and do my bit in getting balanced opinions into the House of Lords. I'm one of many, but I try and do what I can to get a sensible approach to some of the things that I'm interested in and know something about.
Well, I got to say, if you've got Lord as your title, it's got to be easy to get a reservation at a restaurant.
Sometimes that may not be the case. There's plenty of them.
I would question that. In any case, I don't question the book because I think it's really it's designed for people to understand that the times are different now. I mean, when you went to Cambridge, we were talking about it was defined as a mental illness and it was a crime. Times are different now, and especially here in the Bay Area. Somebody comes out and says they're gay, you go, okay. Not like that in the past, hopefully in the future. You've been a delight to talk to, sir.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
It is my pleasure. John Browne, and again, the book is The Glass Closet, Why Coming Out is Good for Business. I'm Ronn Owens. This is KGO, San Francisco, San Jose, Oakland. Coming up next, news from ABC and local news from KGO. We're approaching 11 o'clock.